Rituals can be both gifts and sacrifices. Outwardly, they look the same, but their essence is completely different. A sick person is placed nearby, and through ritual actions, the illness is transferred from the sick physical body to dying in agony. These rituals are performed all over the planet. These rituals exist in Mexico, these rituals exist in America. Moreover, well, just look on the internet and you can find plenty of evidence that high-ranking people participate in this. It's simply the performance of a magical ritual for personal gain. And for this, yes, sacrifices need to be made. They will be rewarded there, they will get karma, but none of this will happen. Because if a person knows the rituals, if they know magic, they understand how these things are balanced.
Recently, a rather notorious incident occurred in India. To attract success to the school, the principal and teachers of this school performed a black magic ritual as a sacrificial ceremony, during which a child died and a criminal case was even initiated. India can be called the spiritual cradle of the world, where many religions originated, and everything is imbued with faith and sanctity. But at the same time, in the modern world, during the 21st century, sacrificial rituals are taking place, and this is not the first case. How would you comment on this?
There are various approaches to spirituality. In India itself, one approach to spirituality is the so-called agori. These are people who smear themselves with the ashes of funeral pyres. These are people who eat the flesh of corpses, live in cemeteries, and generally appear as if they have literally just escaped from a mental institution. There you go. That also exists there, and it is also considered spirituality. We need to understand what we mean by the term spiritual development. In general, what is meant by it? If we mean benefits for people, that's one path. If we mean benefits for the individual who is engaged in it, that's another path. If we mean the ritual part again, then rituals can be both gifts and sacrifices. Externally, they look the same, but their essence is completely different. So, what distinguishes a gift from a sacrifice? The fact that, for example, if we take an animal and ritually kill it, essentially, you are just killing an animal. At the meat processing plant, they kill them in batches. But that's not even a ritual, it's just food. When you kill an animal and give some part of it, the most valuable part, as a gift within the framework of a ritual, and the rest you just grill and eat, essentially, it's no different from a meat processing plant. So you killed the animal, you ate it. Yes, you gave some part as a gift. There is another ritual which is associated with more occult magical systems, where, for example, I am familiar with these rituals where, for instance, a sick person is placed next to a ram and through ritual actions, the illness from the sick physical body, that is, the illness from the person, is transferred to the body of the animal and the animal dies in agony. It's not to say that the person is healed, no, not at all, but the person feels better. Well, for a few years, like 5 or 10 years, they feel better. Then all these illnesses return and the ritual needs to be performed again. Another ram needs to be sacrificed. This also takes place. And if we are talking about spiritual development, in the sense that a person understands themselves and the universe, rituals are not needed for this at all. They are simply not needed. Everything works out wonderfully without them. If we are talking about magic, about occult systems, yes, they are thoroughly permeated with these rituals. And these rituals are performed not only in India, these rituals are performed all over the planet. These rituals exist in Mexico, these rituals exist in America. Moreover, well, just look on the internet and you can find plenty of evidence that high-ranking people participate in this. Well, this is probably not about spiritual development. It's about the benefit of a small group of people. So when a similar situation occurs in India and it is characterized by something related to spirituality, there is no spirituality there. It's a specific benefit. That is the institution. Well, yes, a school, but most likely it's private, nor because it's tied to money if it needs more students, right? That is ordinary profit. With the aim of gaining profit, people performed a magical ritual. well, a child suffered. This is, well, to some extent a catastrophic situation, but it happens. It's not in the cradle of civilization, not in the place where religions originated. It just happened here, that's all. And this happens not only in India, but all over the world. And it has nothing to do with spirituality. It's simply performing a magical ritual for profit. And for this, yes, sacrifices need to be made.
And what consequences does this have? For example, for those who perform these rituals for success, making such sacrifices,
they achieve success. I understand that you expect me to say that they will get what they deserve, that karma will catch up with them, but none of that will happen. It won't happen, because if a person knows the rituals, if they know magic, they know how to balance these things. That's exactly why there must be a sacrifice, onto which all of this can be offloaded, shifted. And the person who knows these rituals, nothing will happen to them. It's another matter that there are other people. And these other people, outraged by the event, they can punish the one who performed it, this ritual. But God will not punish them, reality will not punish them. Their karma will not be spoiled, no matter how much you might want it to be. No, their karma will not be spoiled. Just look around. Look at what is happening on our planet. Non-ritual murders are committed constantly. Moreover, for some murders, the murderers, other people catch them and punish them, imprisoning them for life, while for others, also murders. They are given an apartment, medals, and a military pension. Even though it's murder here and murder there, yes, there are ritual murders. And there are ritual murders that haven't been exposed, and everything is fine for them. And there are ritual murders that have been exposed, and things are bad for them because similarly other people come and start punishing them. From the perspective of karma, from the perspective of interacting with reality, if a person knows how to perform these rituals, nothing bad will happen to them. That's how the world is arranged.
There is also an opinion that those who resort to such rituals and various magical ceremonies make a deal with the devil, sell their soul to him, and, so to speak, this mark stays with the person for life. Even if not with them, then, for example, their children will bear some responsibility for it. What do you think?
No, that's nonsense too. As long as I've been practicing, as many different people as I've seen, as much as I've seen how energies flow in reality, as many conscious beings as I've encountered, I've never met a being called the devil. Not once. Neither the devil, nor Satan, nor Veldevil. There are a bunch of names for him. Not once. Well, he just doesn't exist. If at least someone somewhere had told me about a personal encounter. And I'm not talking about people who claim they've seen God and talked to him. Yes, well, obviously a person cannot approach God. They would simply burn up due to the difference in states. I have never heard such stories from people whose abilities I do not doubt. Never heard? I have never encountered such a being in my practices, in all sorts of life situations. Not once. Therefore, I don't understand with whom these contracts are being made. I have never seen people who, even while practicing magic, somehow carry a mark that they have made some kind of contract. But I know about another process. This process is called the human matrix, or it can also be called the life origin. It is an energetic formation located at the level of the chest, somewhere about 40 to 50 centimeters forward. This energetic formation reflects a person's actions and deeds in relation to their community, that is, humanity. If a person behaves parasitically or inadequately towards humanity, then this life origin, their matrix, begins to dim and eventually extinguish. As soon as it completely extinguishes, the person becomes absolutely lifeless, empty, easily falling into dependencies, striving for nothing, as if they are in the deepest depression. But in reality, depression exists for other reasons as well, just to clarify. But sometimes a person looks as if they are in depression, when in fact they have accumulated so much negativity towards humanity that their vital spark has extinguished. And that's it. And again, this is not about a contract with the devil, which I have never seen. Therefore, certain moments, yes, can be explained, but not in the context that was in the question.
Okay, you mentioned the human matrix. How can a person who is in such a state, for example, get out of it?
They can't get out on their own. Well, Someone has to pull them out of there.
Who?
A teacher, a master, a mentor, a person to whom they are important, a person who is ready to fight for them.
So, in any case, this is already work with energy, and only through practices can some results be achieved.
Listen, surely there are ways to achieve this. Not only through practices. I mean, there must be ways to achieve it. Not only through practices, but when a person starts to sacrifice. Not in the sense of making sacrifices, but by giving alms, helping, sharing, giving charity, participating in something like a rescue service, for example. So he starts giving, he begins to help humanity. And by doing these actions, the spark of life starts to ignite again, meaning he becomes a worthy member of society. But someone has to take care of them, because it's like asking, what should a person do if they've drunk a bottle of vodka? How can they sober up? They can't sober up at all. That's it. He's already drunk it. You have to wait until it lets him go, until his body deals with it all. It's the same here. If a person got into this situation on their own, they can't get out of it anymore. They have nothing to climb out with. They will just continue to sink to the bottom. But if he is important to someone, if he is valuable to someone, if he still had some merits for which someone will stand up for him, then through help, by pulling him into a situation where he starts giving back, he can restore his essence. By the way, in Christianity, this is quite clearly stated, that even a criminal, a thief, can enter heaven. That is, there is a right for a person to change. This is actually true. In other words, we cannot commit an absolutely unforgivable sin. Such a sin does not exist in nature. But we can make so many mistakes that, well, we won't want to untangle them. Precisely, we won't want to. The strength will be there, but we won't want to.
All right. Please tell me, should specific practices be used, or will working with energy in general be able to influence a person's state, and accordingly, will their matrix be restored?
Well, if we are talking about practices, then mainly, how does it all happen in real life, right? A person comes to a session, the facilitator is sitting there. Well, for example, I sit, right? I show this matrix, I start to manifest it, it begins to light up for me. I naturally explain where it is located, where it needs to be felt. So people sit and practice. Their matrix also begins to resonate with mine, also lighting up, becoming noticeable for perception. And so sitting there, a person with an extinguished matrix sits, and his extinguished matrix, resonating with the fiery manifested matrices of other people, also begins to gradually awaken. So in fact, we help him as a group, but he must come to this group. He must start this practice. He must be present in all of this. Then yes, then gradually his matrix. And here it's important to understand that I use the term matrix not in the sense of the movie The Matrix, right? That everything is a computer program. The matrix, like the one used for stamping parts, in this context I use it. It contains, so to speak, the human structure. In the stamping of us as people, the sample is manifested on an energetic level in front of the chest. And depending on how worthy a person you are, it has luminosity.
And in which of your courses can one get acquainted with?
In the first course, I immediately show these energetic states, immediately show these areas, and in principle, if a person hasn't made a lot of mistakes, they can quite easily handle these practices on their own.
So if we consider, for example, a person who is in a state of depression, apathy, they wake up in the morning with great difficulty, they don't feel energy. So can we say that they have some problem specifically with the human matrix?
No, it's not that straightforward. If a person has been bad, they fully understand that they are a scoundrel, and they start losing their strength, losing interest, losing the meaning of what's happening. Everything becomes indifferent to them, they start losing money, they begin to make completely foolish actions. They understand that they are making foolish actions, but they don't care about any of it. So they just start to fade right before your eyes. Yes, that seems to be true. But if a person just feels unwell, there could be 1,000 reasons for that. Mostly people subconsciously understand that they are scoundrels. So yes, they can put on a mask, they can apply some makeup, in other words, disguise themselves. But inside every person absolutely understands what they are doing. You can't deceive yourself.
And how do you find that balance? On one hand, in following traditions and faith, and on the other hand, in an age of tolerance, globalization, and progress. Where is that fine line between not drifting off into space, reaching the point where a person performs rituals and kills people or animals, and, at the same time, living in this world, with sensitivity and awareness of external factors? Where is the balance between spirituality and the material world?
In extrasensory perception, you have to see it. If you see how your energy moves, you won't have the question of where that balance is. If you don't see how your energy moves, you're out of luck. It can't be explained to you. Because the brain cannot process information it hasn't encountered. Our brain is not capable of assessing a person's state if it relies only on the senses. If we try to assess our state based on the senses, we are looking at the very last iteration, at the physical. Accordingly, we fight for the physical, we save the physical. And this is already the extreme degree of consciousness transformation, the extreme degree of energy transformation. That is, everything has already happened, it has already manifested physically. Only at this moment do you come to your senses and start doing something. That's why extrasensory perception is needed. It needs to be trained, it needs to be developed. It is an absolutely normal, standard skill for a person. It is not something supernatural, it is not something beyond. It's the same as learning to drive a car, learning to ride a bicycle, learning to swim. Exactly the same. You just practice and you succeed. When a person has the ability to perceive their own energy, that's when they have the opportunity to maintain this balance. Because they see, aha, now I'm taking actions. My energy starts to shrink, tighten, spasm. It can no longer flow. And now I'm taking actions. My energy opens up, flows, and pours out in all directions. He sees this. This is how he maintains balance. If he doesn't see this in any way, by any means, he might not maintain balance.
I am Orthodox. The Church has a negative attitude towards yoga and meditation. Inside me, a struggle between two directions begins. On one side, the faith of my ancestors. On the other side, a new path to knowledge. Have you gone through this? What should I do?
I went through this, but from a completely different side. My family was absolutely atheistic, absolutely, completely, as much as one could imagine. I had a book at home on the table called The Atheist's Handbook, and my parents, hoping I would read it, constantly put it in front of me, and then the collapse of the Soviet Union happened. And all of this flooded onto TV screens, into stores, basically from all sides. That's it. And then, for my still immature mind, the question arose, how is this even possible? Why did something that was previously completely ignored, denied, and unacceptable suddenly become self-evident, suddenly become normal? So it turns out that my ancestors, my parents, yes, right before my eyes, also slowly began to change, transforming into people who stood there quietly in front of the TV when Kashpirovsky was performing. I still remember their names. They are Kashpirovsky, Chumak, Longo, and Juna. These are the four people who were constantly on TV screens and in newspapers. I observed all of this, and it also shaped me. Naturally, I asked myself, where is the truth? Where is the truth? And it became obvious to me that the people around me, they themselves don't know where this truth is. They were initially absolutely sure of one thing. Then their belief wavered, and now they, are reading Juna's little book about how extrasensory perception works. And for me, one very important and very correct answer became obvious, which I gave to myself. I must figure this out on my own. Trust no one. I can no longer do, because I really saw that when the people around me didn't understand something or didn't know something, driven by their desire to appear smart in front of me, a child, they simply started lying to my face. And at first I didn't understand this. Then I began to notice it, and then they got caught. And at some point, I made the decision that that's it. I trust no one. No one understands anything at all. I will figure things out myself. As of today, 2/3 of my life My life has already been dedicated to this. I can say with full responsibility, I figured it out, and now I help other people also navigate through all this diversity. The orientation is very simple. Develop extrasensory perception. Develop extrasensory perception. Without it, you'll get confused. Without it, you'll get lost. Without it, someone will still lead you astray. And this is not a question of religion. In Christianity, it's all the same, just described in different words, different terms. It's all the same, especially if you take not the Old Testament, but if you take the gospel, if you take the path of Jesus Christ. I have absolutely no questions about what he did, about what he said. Everything fits perfectly. Under yoga, under Sri Vidya, under the real structure of the world. Even under Carlos Castaneda, it all fits. But it all fits when you have the ability to see it. Then you say, oh, so that's what he's talking about? Oh, so that's about this process. And this is what he's talking about regarding this energy. And this is what he is describing about this practice. Yes, we call it differently, but it's the same thing though. Therefore, if a person is motivated by religious dogmas, if a person is motivated by certain rules and orders, no chance you won't break free, you'll get lost. If a person starts to navigate solely by their own perception abilities, by visual perception, smell, touch, senses, and extrasensory perceptions, which also develop, then it becomes very difficult to lead them astray. And for me, it was another key moment in life when I was reading the Vedic texts, Mahanirvana, Tantra, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Puranas, Shastras, many different texts. I began to read them initially without having extrasensory abilities, without having practice, without having this knowledge. I didn't understand anything at all. I read it not even as a fairy tale. I read it just as nonsense. Vasista Yoga, there's another one. I remembered that too. You also start reading. It seems like the page is finished, but my mind is blank. You reread again. The page is finished. What was I just reading about? I just wipe it from my mind. Nothing stayed. Oh, Vasista Yoga. And I gave it up. I realized it was useless, but Castaneda's book stayed in my head. You know, some esoteric books, like I liked Monroe, Richard Bach's books, I think were also good books. So some stayed, some, especially the older ones, were not perceived at all. And only when I started developing extrasensory perception, when I began practicing energy work, when I started looking for these processes within myself, when I found the area of sincerity, when I found the heart, I picked up Vedic literature again, and it all resonated completely differently. I was no longer reading the text, I was reading the vibrations contained within it. My energy was ablaze. My area of sincerity was just sparkling like, I don't know, snowdrifts in the sun. Not snowdrifts, snowflakes in the sun. That is, my energy was just in ecstasy from these texts. And this was already fitting in my mind. I stopped reading the sequence of events. I started reading the essence. And finally, I think it was in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, when there is a narration that the disciples, I think, asked the sage about some story that someone told them. And the story is about a woman walking through the city, through the castle. This castle has 5 entrances, and a dragon is following her. And something is happening like that. And you read it and think, what am I even reading? What is this about? So, and right in the text itself, the sage's students ask, listen, he says, what are you even telling us about? We don't understand you. He says, well, look, there is an explanation that the dragon is the Kundalini energy, the castle is the physical body, the woman is the vortex of Shakti. These entrances to the fortress that guards the dragon are the openings in the body. So there's the mouth, ears, sexual organs, excretory organs. So the sage himself begins to explain what he just conveyed, but in an abstract way. And these texts, they are abstract. It's the same as with the Pandavas. There, 5 husbands took 1 wife for themselves. When you read it with your brain, you're like, what? I would still agree with a harem, but this is something completely strange. But in fact, it narrates about how the whirlwind of Shakti, that is the energy of the feminine principle, unites the 5 divine qualities, the 5 qualities of Shiva, into a single cohesive energy, and this can only be felt through extrasensory perception. It can only be felt by having the ability to perceive with the body of second attention. And all this is revealed through practices. These books are not fairy tales. They are not stories. They are precisely a set of vibrations and a set of states. These states are revealed only to those people who possess vision. Therefore, if you are faced with the question of whether to choose yoga or Christianity, choose extrasensory perception, develop it within yourself, and you will see that even in Christianity there are very serious practices, very powerful people. They are not in the spotlight. They are not for show. Yes, there are absolutely, the service staff, and there can be no questions to them in principle. You don't go to a bank and catch the person standing at the entrance, right? And you don't start making claims against them. You clearly understand that this person is just standing at the entrance. So, hello, goodbye. That's their entire task, as it were. Here, religion is more a huge machine. In this machine, there is a huge number of people. And in any religion, there are people who are very good at all processes, very well, but they are not exactly accessible. They are not standing on every corner. And to reach them, you will have to make an effort. You need to be very motivated. At the same time, there is a huge number of other people in the same religion who simply support the usual everyday processes. And there can be no complaints against them because they do not have the task of enlightening you and leading you by the hand to God.
How is the word Shri translated or interpreted? And how is the word Yantra translated or interpreted?
Well, the word Shri translates to absolute, supreme, best, perfect. And Yantra is a pattern.
Hello. I heard in some interview, you said that joy is also bad.
Yes.
Can you explain a bit more about these emotions? Why is it better to maintain balance more often rather than indulge in joy?
There is a very fine line in terminology here. And if we continue to rely solely on words, there will likely still be misunderstandings. So I will start by explaining how to figure this out on your own. And then I will try to find the right words to explain that being joyful might lead to problems. We have a heart, a physical, ordinary heart that beats and circulates blood throughout the body. On the level of physics, on the level of energy, in this very same place, our spiritual heart is present. And besides our spiritual heart, we also have, in this same area, in the middle of the physical heart, we have a bindu. From this bindu, energy flows. This energy is called love. When this energy flows, due to some causality in the external world, it ends very quickly. However, if this energy flows from the space of the bindu in the middle of the physical heart, just because you are alive, because you are living, then it becomes a kind of indicator, an indicator of your state and what you are doing. And when a person, through practices, achieves awareness and sensation of this indicator, when this indicator becomes as self-evident to them as sight, smell, touch, hearing, taste, just like the heart, then, thanks to this sense organ, they can be aware of what exactly is happening when performing a particular action. That is, they either increase their vitality, and then this indicator starts to ignite. In other words, there is more love, more fire. It is physically felt as heat. There is more fire. Here, streams, rivers, spirals, tornadoes begin to flow directly. You can call it whatever you like. That's it. There are actions and deeds that, on the contrary, close off these processes here, and the heart begins to clog. And when a person sees their heart, when they become aware, when they feel themselves, their actions, and the reality around them with their heart, that's when they understand, very clearly understand, that if you laugh like a horse, your energy fades. If you rejoice in such genuine happiness, you might not even need to laugh. You simply enjoy the process. Then the heart opens up and it burns. It's not possible to simply explain that this is bad and that is good, because everyone has their own associations with words. But when a person is really laughing, when they are guffawing, those around them might, if you've been near such a person, you might even feel some negativity towards them, like some kind of disgust. Something might even stir inside you when you look at a person who seems to be laughing, but for some reason you find them repulsive. This is the reaction to that killing laughter. That is suppressive, stifling laughter. And then there's a person who, when they laugh, it makes you feel good inside. That's a different kind of laughter. It's safe laughter. There's no problem in it. When a person, for example, rejoices over something from the position of, ha ha ha, it's mine, finally, now I am, their energy becomes constricted, spasmed. At that moment, he is destroying himself. But when a person, for example, I don't know, goes on vacation, yes, looks at, well, I don't know, the calm ocean, the sun setting, birds singing, and he is happy just to be there. He doesn't get entangled in it all. He doesn't grab it. He doesn't try to claim it all as his own. He simply enjoys the moment itself, the process itself. At this moment, his heart, his soul opens up. His energy flows. And the difference between these two types of joy is colossal. With one type of joy, your vitality increases. You become healthy, powerful, successful. With the other type of joy, everything shuts down, money is lost, there are problems at work, scandals, and you become embittered. Although it would seem there's joy here and joy there, but it's not the same at all. When a person laughs like a horse, they also become food for inorganic beings.
Stopping or slowing down the internal dialogue by engaging it with certain actions, like asynchronous alternating finger movements, maximizing the number of objects in your field of vision, walking at dusk, and so on, can be done for a while, but in a state of rest or relaxation. It's quite difficult, as you try to relax your body as much as possible and avoid actions. And there it is, blah, blah, blah. Are there any effective techniques for stopping the internal dialogue in a state of rest and body relaxation?
Yes. This technique is called multiple repetition. When a person accumulates time being without internal dialogue, they train themselves to remain in this state. Accordingly, if I, for example, tap my fingers asynchronously, immersing myself in the absence of internal dialogue, or when I look out the window with the widest possible scope of my gaze so that as many objects as possible fall on the horizon level, overloading my perception, again blocking the internal dialogue, I increase the time spent in this state. The more I stay in this state, the longer I remain in this state, the easier it becomes for me to simply turn it off without any additional crutches or tools. As the time spent in the state of absent internal dialogue accumulates, a person can generally enter a state of internal silence. This is a very deep state, described in various ways across different traditions. Some call it samadhi, others call it nirvana, but it doesn't really matter what words people choose. For example, I particularly like the term from Castaneda's books, where it's called stopping the world, and the world really does stop. That is, if you accumulate a significant amount of time being without internal dialogue, reality can at some point just slow down. Meanwhile, you continue to perceive everything. It's a very cool state. You just need to practice. You just need to practice. There are energy practices. These are physical practices where you make asynchronous movements with your hand or with your hands. There are Buddha mental practices where you simply overload the volume of perception, what is perceived when you look, as widely as possible and at the horizon level. And there are energy practices. For this, you need to greatly accelerate the movement of energy through the top of your head by any processes, by any means. It doesn't matter how. It's important for this to happen. And when the energy starts moving very quickly here, this symbiont parasite is washed out from there. But if the energy starts to slow down again, if it begins to reduce its intensity, its fiery nature, then this symbiont parasite will immediately latch on again. It's useless to tear it off. You remove one, and 10 more will swarm in. That is, they are constantly around us. So pulling it out from there makes no sense. You can very strongly focus your attention again in the area above the crown. Directly concentrate your attention. This will also suppress the internal dialogue. But again, if you lose focus, if your attention gets slightly distracted, the mechanism will turn on again. Therefore, the most effective, the most optimal way is to simply accumulate time being without thoughts. Get used to this state, learn this state, and stay in it as long as possible.
I started living by my heart, felt like the creator of my own life. My health improved, fears, doubts, worries about the future, and grievances towards myself and others disappeared. Relationships with my partner and child improved. A new level of interaction, deep and trusting. I was able to transform a close person, help them open their heart. I fall asleep very quickly, knowing how to properly relax my body. I sleep deeply and wake up easily and early. I have energy and interest in life. I started to listen to my intuition more. And thanks to this, I avoided medical intervention in my body and unnecessary trips. I surrendered to life and relaxed. Pleasant surprises and magic started happening in my life. I started running again after a 4-year break due to health issues. I am very glad that such powerful, effective practices are now available to me. Writes about how she opened her heart and her life changed for the better in all areas, starting with family relationships and continuing with health. Let's touch on the topic of opening the heart and talk about it in a bit more detail. How can this be done, and how will it affect a person's life?
I can only speak for myself, how it can be done, how I did it. I dedicated 2/3 of my life to practices. I did a huge number of mantra practices. I spent a vast amount of time in meditation. I spent a vast amount of time in austerities. And all of this together, after 6 years, once I set this goal for myself, yielded results. But sometimes people come to me for individual consultations with a similar request and manage to do it in 15 minutes. How does that happen? It's all very individual. The interaction between a person who is aware of themselves in a physical body and the person who resides within the heart is all one being. Their relationship is exclusively intimate, exclusively. No one can in any way intrude and fix them. Not at all. It's like trying to get between, I don't know, my liver and my brain and trying to fix something inside me. Of course, doctors are moving in this direction now, and they even manage to achieve something. But the essence is that there can be no intermediaries there. But when a person has access to someone who has gone through this path, who has these settings within themselves, who knows how to demonstrate this, it becomes very easy for them to do it. But still, they must do it themselves. I have observed many times people who come with such a request, but behave differently. There are people who come to me with this request to open their hearts, and they are in despair. They are ready to do anything. By the way, at this moment, I could, in principle, ask them for anything, and they would most likely do it. But I don't do that because how you act is how others will act towards you. In other words, how you are towards the world is how the world is with you. But at this moment, they are very vulnerable. That's the point. That is, they are very vulnerable. They are very open. They are ready for anything. And when you tell such a person, do this, this, and this right now, without any preliminaries or delays, just sit down and practice. Sometimes these people manage to reach the awareness of their heart in just a few minutes. But when a person comes to me with an arrogant attitude like, oh, come on, open my heart, I immediately understand that they still have a long, long way to go to realize themselves and their divinity in the heart as one. Because even in practice, this person sits like, like an audience member. Well, come on, let's see, dance already, someone, somewhere. So, how does the deity call you? Come on, someone. So, such an arrogant attitude towards oneself. Naturally, these people have a long, long way to go to connect with their soul.
And why might a person have a closed heart?
Well, look, it's just a term. A completely closed heart is only in a corpse. No matter how much a person tries to block or seal themselves off, some processes are still happening and energy is still moving somehow. Therefore, the term closed heart doesn't quite reflect reality. Yes, the intensity might decrease. Yes, it might be, like this. If you imagine a cable with a huge number of plugs, so it's plugged in, right? And here, you can imagine that 90% of the plugs have already burned out, rusted, oxidized and no longer function. But 10% of the plugs still somehow conduct signals. The person will still live. Only when it completely burns out 100% does the person turn into a corpse. Why does this happen? Because the person does not realize or feel it. No one tells them. No one serves as an example for them. We have very few role models. People whose hearts are truly open, not those who talk about it at every corner, but those who embody this state. Very few. Therefore, you won't even be able to find an idol in this process. You'll still stumble upon something else, even if they tell you it's about the soul. That's why people do not know, truly do not know what they are doing. And when their physical body starts to crumble, when their psyche crumbles, when their energy crumbles, because it's all spasm, vitality, when it starts to physically decline, that's when they finally wake up. And what is happening? And then you start explaining to the person like this, like this, like this. The first thing he does is, well, he resists, saying, how did I manage to live until today then? I say, well, how did you live? Are you satisfied with this result? No, it doesn't satisfy me. So let's admit to yourself that the way you are living doesn't satisfy you, which means it's definitely not what you want and not what you need. And what do you need? You need, for example, yes, to connect with your soul, to feel. For this, and for this, there are tons of recommendations, techniques, exercises, and various methods. And all of this, a person starts to gradually do. Again, it all depends on the state and determination. If a person is so constrained by circumstances that their determination is absolute, they will succeed very quickly. If a person is still ready to show off when they are still ready to be in such an arrogant state, like, where is my soul? Come on, come out, show yourself. Then they will have to practice.
Anton, does opening the heart mean specifically working with the heart chakra?
No.
Are they different things?
No, the heart chakra. What is it called? Anahata, I think it's called. It is located much higher than the level of the heart. The anahata is located slightly above the middle of the chest. The point of contact with the soul is in the middle of the heart, that is, in the lower part of the chest. So, if my chest starts where the button is, I place my fist right in the middle of the chest. This area, more or less, is responsible for contact with the soul. And what is located above is an energy center that has nothing to do with the soul.
Which areas, perhaps in the material world, does an open heart influence?
Everything.
So it's not just about relationships, love, and so on. So it's all areas.
You see, it's the same as, like we're talking about, well, spirituality, about energy, right? Well, let's draw an analogy. Which areas do money influence for us? They influence everything. It's the same here. Yes, you can quickly ruin yourself with money, but you can do the same with your heart if you close it. If you close your heart, if you cramp it, you can quickly ruin yourself. If your heart is on fire, if you feel heat on a physical level, love on a psychological level, and energetically it flows from you and shapes the space around you, no matter what you engage in, everything will be perfect. Anywhere. And you know, I once talked about all these things, and a person sits, it was also an individual consultation, and sits there asking me a question. It says, listen, so if your heart is open, you can kill and everything will be fine for you? I say, yes, that's right. How can that be? I say, well, if you can kill with an open heart, everything will be fine for you. She didn't believe me. Then she comes the next day. Well, not the next day, but the next session. The task there was to reach the soul. We start practicing. And suddenly I see her process is going. It all starts to open up. She managed it literally by the second session. And there she was, filled with it. She felt that contact. Her eyes sparkled, and she had a smile from ear to ear. I said, well, now tell me, how were you planning to kill from such a state? She says, I immediately understood everything about myself. When I felt this, I realized the absurdity of that question. But when a person's heart is closed, they genuinely ask such questions because they don't understand what it is. They haven't lived in such a state. They haven't felt such a state. But when this contact happens, just in an instant, your entire worldview is transformed. But you can fall out of this state. If you fall out of this state, you start asking very strange questions again and begin to behave very oddly.
Many practitioners also say that when applying practices to open the heart chakra center, problems with the heart and chest area begin. That is, it can cause some painful sensations, like heart pricks or other issues. Is this really dangerous, or is it a normal reaction?
Do you understand what the issue is here? I have experienced all of this too. I went through all of it. My heart was completely closed off. I remember when I was talking to my teacher, he said, "Well, Anton, your heart is closed." And I calmly looked him in the eyes and said, "Yes, I know, I'm fine." In other words, it didn't bother me at all. He said, "All right, keep practicing." And at some point, the practices, they are quite effective. Whether I liked it or not, they started triggering these processes in me. That is, they started to eliminate those constraining structures that didn't allow the heart to open properly. Yes, it was working at some 10% of its capacity, but just enough so that I wouldn't freeze or fall. And that's when I felt the entire conglomerate of the soul's pain. And it's a pain that feels as if physically a piece of rebar was stuck into you, as if something here was pressed and burst and started flowing inside. At that moment, I really came to terms with the thought that maybe some artery or something had burst. It was so painful, it shot right through. It felt like whiskey was pouring from my eyes, and it just flowed inside. I thought, well, something definitely tore off. I'm sitting here, so to speak, as long as I'm breathing. It seems like I'm not dying, not losing consciousness. It seems to have gotten a bit easier. Well, there was still this buzzing pain, but overall it became easier. It seems like the energy has improved, but the pain is still there. These are all aspects of the second attention, aspects of the energy body when it's frozen there, crystallized like a lump of dirt, I don't know, like gum in your hair. All of this has been lying there for decades, and when you start to slowly pull it apart, it pricks. It pricks. These little crystals, these ice shards, before they melt, they scratch you. They feel very painful. And when it comes to physical pain, well, you can generally deal with it right away, right? I think everyone remembers what a toothache is like. Everyone remembers when you bump yourself, you need to, well, you can deal with it. It's not something that will make you lose consciousness, right? But when this pain starts to transfer to the level of the psyche, meaning it hurts, but not physically, it's an even more interesting state. When this pain starts to flow into energetic processes, that is, it's completely unclear how to endure it. You have no way to localize in your understanding that it hurts here or there. No, Kai, you just feel bad. You just feel awful. And it's not because something happened to you, right? Not because your girlfriend left you, right? Not because you got fired from your job and have a 30-year mortgage hanging over you. Not because of that. You just feel awful because you feel awful. There's no causality. There's nothing you can even pinpoint. And all these constraining structures start to move. They begin to break. They start to crack. Processes of burnout, melting up and washing away begin to occur. And when you finally come to the understanding of, well, what to do, you have to burn it all away. You sit down to practice, yes, and you just endure, just keep your focus. Then you take a break, exhale, get distracted by something, return to practice again, enter these states again, reignite that flame, and it starts to hurt again. You endure it again. You understand what's happening. But when you don't understand what's happening, you might really want to run and call an ambulance for yourself. Because the sensations are so intense, it's like, I don't know, an artery has torn off just like that, right? And it's absolutely real. But it's all about energy. And this is what explains the fact that the person doesn't want to listen to their soul. It's painful at first. And the more a person distances themselves from it, the more they don't want to listen to it, the more painful it will be in the end. Or they will simply die. When a person's vitality completely ends, death comes and amputates that piece of consciousness.
And why do transformations in a person often happen? Through pain.
A person is in a hurry. But it's the same as going to the gym and working out properly And in 2 days, you won't be able to lift your arms. Everything will hurt. You can go to the gym and first do some fitness for the first time, then do a light workout the second time, take a heavier load the third time, and by the 10th or 20th time, you can lie under the barbell, and then nothing will hurt. Well, yes, there will be a slight feeling of being trained. The same goes for energy work. If you gradually, carefully start with the simplest, most understandable and safest processes, like the energy flowing at the fingertips, slowly, slowly, slowly ignite yourself. There will be no pain. My experience shows that people who choose the path of spiritual development want everything at once. That is, it's a kind of internal pride. What is your most difficult practice? Bring it to me here. Naturally, it will be painful because a difficult practice is an effective practice, and an effective practice yields such results that it can tie a person into a knot. When I teach, even for experienced practitioners, experienced students, I still start the practice with simple processes, then more fiery, more, and more. Only at the end do we burn at full power. If you jump straight in, well, basically a person might just pass out. I've also seen these processes when a person takes on practices beyond their strength and they fall asleep. They start practicing, 30 or 40 seconds pass, and boom, they're out. They're asleep. It's practically like losing consciousness from excessive physical exertion. But if you do everything systematically, carefully, calmly, without rushing, you need to tame your pride. Yes, I'm going to do all of this just like that. If you follow a harmonious path, there will be no pain. Well, to be honest, I jumped into all the practices with both feet. I just heard about what you can avoid eating and drinking. That's it, starting tomorrow from today. What? Is this practice the most dangerous? Oh, that's it, I'm going for it. Even though I started practicing there 6 months ago. Oshana said there would be some secret practice only for his students. I must be there, I must get in. So I was like that myself. I can't say whether it's right or wrong, but I can say that the higher the level you jump to, the more painful it will be there, but more effective.
So after all, you need to approach everything gradually and step by step.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If a person steps onto this path and moves along it unyieldingly, without any alternatives, they will still make it in time. Everything will be fine for them. Some people enjoy it when every cell in their body feels that they have practiced. Well, some enjoy it when everything is calm, harmonious, and almost without any extra sensations. That is, everything is as light as possible. These are purely individual characteristics of a person. When I was young and bold, I didn't acknowledge practices after which I didn't feel bad at all. Like, it's some kind of nonsense. Well, I just didn't acknowledge them, that's all. Why should I practice ineffectively? If I know a practice after which I just lie flat and wait until everything comes back to normal. But the older I got, and the more my skill in this area increased, the more calm the practice became. Therefore, there is no right answer here. The answer should resonate with each person individually. And each person provides this answer to themselves.
In which of the courses can a person find this practice if they want to open their heart?
You know, as of today, there is already an opportunity to jump into almost any level of practice. That is, there is practical energy work, from the simplest processes to the state of basic fire. Again, a huge number of practices have already been made available to the public. Everything is open. Not all more. Some part of them is open. So you can try some practices, other practices, and see how it all affects you. There are practices even related to awakening the yantra, which are also quite freely accessible. You can try them and feel them for yourself.
Thank you, Anton, for the answers. Be sure to write your questions and impressions. We might answer them in the next video.
Do you want to unlock your inner strength and learn to manage energy? The course, Power of Consciousness 1. Practical energy will provide you with tools to improve health, develop intuition, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Join and start changing your life right now. Link in the description.